Welcome to True Crime Story Time. This channel explores true crime cases, revealing the mysteries behind crimes through each fascinating and dramatic story. On the gloomy morning of December 23, 2019, in Kansas City, Missouri, an emergency 911 call brought rescue workers to a small apartment. There, they discovered a heartbreaking scene. Little Stevie Osborne, just 2 years old, lying motionless, her body covered in bruises. Stevie had been the bright light of her family, but now she was the center of a painful tragedy. The question begins to arise. What happened that fateful night? What turned what should have been a normal evening into a horrific tragedy? As police began investigating Stevie's final hours, they uncovered a series of shocking and horrifying details that left the family heartbroken and the community in shock. Behind Stevie's innocent smile and bright eyes lies a tearful story that leaves unanswered questions. How could a family endure such a loss, and who is responsible for the loss of a little angel? Stevie Osborne was born on April 28, 2017, in Kansas City, Missouri. The only child of Abigail and Gary Osborne, she was named in honor of her grandfather Steve and late Aunt Allison. With her sparkling brown eyes, red hair, and radiant smile, Stevie not only brightened her family's days, but also brought joy and love to anyone who met her. From a young age, Stevie stood out for her cheerful, enthusiastic personality. Those who know her describe Stevie as a fun princess who radiates positive energy. She loves Disney movies, especially Frozen, and often hums songs featuring Olaf and Anna. Stevie also loves animals, especially her grandmother's cat Charlie. Stevie's sneaky drinking of her father's soda or eating his sandwich often makes the whole family laugh. The Osborne family was initially a happy picture. Stevie's father, Gary Osborne, was a hardworking man who loved his daughter very much. He graduated from Park Hill High School and began dating Abigail right after graduation. Abigail, an intelligent and strong-willed woman, worked as a medical assistant and dreamed of becoming a professional nurse. However, Gary and Abigail's marriage quickly fell apart after Stevie was born. Just 5 months after giving birth, Abigail filed for divorce, accusing Gary of negligence. The breakup of the family not only deeply hurt Gary, but also left Stevie in an unstable environment. After the divorce, Abigail was given sole custody of Stevie, while Gary was only allowed to see his child on weekends. Abigail later remarried to a man named Corey, but that marriage did not last. In 2019, she entered a new relationship with Joseph, a former classmate. Joseph, who was born in Korea and raised in Kansas City, soon moved in with Abigail and Stevie. While the relationship initially seemed stable, signs of trouble began to emerge when Joseph began exhibiting uncontrollable anger. In this context, Stevie, an innocent and vulnerable girl, was subjected to events no child should ever have to endure. Her story would soon take a dramatic and heartbreaking turn, leaving the entire Kansas City community in shock. On December 23, 2019, in the early morning hours, a 911 call was placed from the Wild Oak Apartments in Kansas City, Missouri. The caller, Joseph, Abigail's boyfriend, reported that Stevie had fallen off the bed and was unresponsive. Emergency crews arrived at the scene and found the 2-year-old unresponsive and covered in bruises. Stevie was rushed to Liberty Hospital in cardiac arrest, where doctors determined she had suffered multiple serious injuries, including a fractured skull, severe brain damage, and abdominal trauma. After assessing the severity of her injuries, she was transferred to Children's Mercy Hospital for emergency surgery to save her life. Meanwhile, Gary Osborne, Stevie's father, was at work when he received the call with the devastating news. He rushed to the hospital as fast as he could, but his heart broke when he was told that his daughter's condition was critical. Doctors said Stevie had been deprived of oxygen to her brain for more than 20 minutes, a sign of irreversible brain damage. Stevie was rushed into surgery for an emergency brain surgery to relieve the pressure and save her life. However, during the surgery, Stevie's little heart was no longer able to cope. She passed away at 1:28 p.m. that same day, just 2 days before Christmas. Stevie's death left the family in grief and shock. Her mother, Abigail, reportedly did not shed a tear when she received the news of her daughter's death, which made Gary and other family members even more suspicious. Abigail even called her mother in a cold voice, saying only, "You can go home. She's dead." When the autopsy results were released on December 24th, a clearer picture of Stevie's tragedy was painted. The results showed that the girl had suffered horrific injuries, including skull fracture with multiple fractures, severe brain hemorrhage, bruises on the forehead, upper lip, chest, abdomen, arms, and legs, internal injuries to the abdomen and intestines. Stevie's death was ruled a homicide and was caused by blunt force trauma to the head. The gruesome details led investigators to ask, who could have inflicted such horrific injuries on an innocent little girl? Authorities quickly focused their investigation on Joseph, Abigail's boyfriend, who was the last person to care for Stevie before her death. Joseph and Abigail's initial statements were filled with contradictions and raised suspicions. Abigail admitted that Stevie had been bruised and ill for several days, but she had not taken her child to the hospital. Joseph claimed that Stevie's injuries were caused by a fall after tripping over a dog in the house, but medical experts said the injuries were too severe to be caused by a simple fall. While Stevie was transferred to Children's Mercy Hospital for emergency treatment, police began investigating the scene. At the apartment, they noted that there were no signs of forced entry or serious injury, which led them to suspect that Stevie's injuries may have been the result of abuse. Investigators also found items in the home, including Stevie's toys and belongings, but there was nothing obvious that could have caused her severe injuries. Small blood stains were noted on the bed and bedroom walls, raising suspicions of serious abuse. Joseph initially claimed that Stevie had tripped over the family dog and then fallen off the bed while sleeping, leaving her unresponsive. However, investigators quickly dismissed this claim when medical experts determined that Stevie's injuries could not have resulted from such a simple accident. Abigail. As an emergency room nurse, Abigail admitted that she had noticed Stevie's unusual condition a few days before her death. Stevie had been vomiting, had bruises, and was lethargic. However, Abigail did not take Stevie to the hospital and treated her at home with anti-nausea medication and soda. Abigail also admitted that Joseph frequently lost control and displayed angry behavior, but she did not think he would harm Stevie. Police interviewed Abigail's family members and friends to learn more about Stevie's condition before her death. Many expressed concern about the relationship between Joseph and Stevie. They confirmed that Stevie appeared unwell, with a pale face, obvious bruises on her forehead and ears, and constant vomiting. Joseph refused to let anyone else change Stevie's clothes or care for her, which raised suspicions. Several neighbors reported hearing screaming and arguing coming from Abigail and Joseph's apartment in the days before Stevie's death. During the investigation, authorities focused on determining the motive behind Stevie Osborne's tragic death. Given the signs of prolonged abuse and her deteriorating health in the days before her death, investigators determined that this was not an accident, but the result of intentional behavior. Joseph, Abigail's boyfriend, was the main suspect from the beginning. In his initial testimony, he admitted that Stevie had fallen in the house a few days before her death, which left her feeling unwell. However, investigators found that this story did not match the severity of Stevie's injuries, which included severe traumatic brain injury. Forensic doctors determined that this injury could not have been caused by falling out of bed or hitting objects in the house. Unusual bruising. Bruises around the ears and wrists were characteristic of abuse, not an accident. Internal injuries. bleeding in the abdomen and internal organs suggested that Stevie had been severely beaten in the abdomen. Joseph had a history of losing control of his emotions, especially when angry. According to Abigail and several witnesses, Joseph had frequent violent outbursts of anger, including punching and destroying furniture in the house. Although he had never been accused of child abuse before, these signs led police to suspect that he may have caused Stevie's injuries. Abigail, Stevie's biological mother, was also placed under investigation. Although she was not directly considered a suspect, her negligence contributed to the tragedy. As a registered nurse in the emergency room, Abigail had the knowledge to recognize that Stevie was in danger, but she failed to take her daughter to the emergency room when she noticed obvious signs, such as continuous vomiting, lethargy, lack of response, bruises in multiple locations. She even attended a family gathering where several relatives expressed concern about Stevie's health, but she still did not take action to protect her child. Investigators also questioned Abigail's decision to leave Joseph, who had a history of anger and violent behavior, in unsupervised care of Stevie. During the Christmas party, Joseph took complete control of Stevie's care, from changing her clothes to keeping her away from family members. This behavior, according to criminal psychologists, could be a sign of an intentional attempt to conceal the injuries on Stevie's body in order to avoid public attention. Joseph also reportedly argued with Abigail after the party, in which she confronted him about the bruises on Stevie's body. However, instead of seeking help, Abigail chose to continue living with Joseph, allowing him to stay at the house for a few more days. With the evidence gathered, Joseph, Abigail's boyfriend, quickly became the prime suspect in the case. When investigators compared the results of Stevie's autopsy with Joseph's testimony, they found many obvious inconsistencies. Joseph claimed that Stevie fell and injured herself, but the severe injuries to her body, including brain and internal injuries, were inconsistent with this explanation. After Stevie's death, Joseph became unstable. He left the apartment where Abigail and he shared and returned to his parents' home in Kansas City. On January 6, 2021, a warrant was issued for Joseph's arrest, charging him with murder and child abuse. However, just before police arrived to execute the warrant, Joseph took his own life with a gun in the bathroom of his parents' home. Joseph's death prevented his prosecution from continuing, but investigators claimed that his death was an implicit admission of guilt. They concluded that Joseph was primarily responsible for Stevie's death, but this also meant that no public trial was held to clarify the details of the case. After Joseph's death, authorities continued to investigate Abigail's role in the case. Although she was not directly charged with causing Stevie's death, she faced questions about her negligence and failure to protect her daughter. Investigators determined that Abigail had noticed Stevie's unusual condition in the days leading up to her death. However, instead of taking her daughter to a doctor or hospital, she chose to treat her daughter at home, which directly led to serious consequences. Additionally, Abigail's allowing Joseph, who had a history of anger and violence, to care for Stevie without supervision was also considered negligent behavior. The Missouri Department of Children and Family Services filed a formal report alleging Abigail had committed gross negligence in the care and protection of Stevie. The report resulted in her being placed on the state's child abuse and neglect registry. Abigail later filed an appeal to have her name removed from the list, but the court denied her request. However, Abigail was not directly charged with a crime. The Clay County District Attorney's Office argued that her actions, while reprehensible, did not warrant criminal prosecution. It is not a crime to be an irresponsible or incompetent mother, said District Attorney Robert Sanders. We have already dealt with the person who caused Stevie's death, Joseph. The decision has sparked outrage among Stevie's father, Gary Osborne, and the local community. Many believe Abigail bears greater responsibility because she was the mother and failed to act when she saw the signs of danger. Stevie's father, Gary Osborne, continues to call for justice for his daughter, criticizing the legal system for failing to protect Stevie both when she was alive and after her death. Gary feels abandoned and unheard, especially when the prosecutor refuses to take Abigail to court. Meanwhile, Abigail continues to work to have her name removed from the child abuse registry, insisting that she did not mean to harm Stevie. However, the public and Stevie's family do not accept this defense, arguing that her indifference led to tragic consequences. The trial into Abigail's involvement and Joseph's actions in Stevie Osborne's death has been emotional and contentious. Although Joseph committed suicide before his arrest, his confession, along with autopsy evidence, became central to the case. However, Abigail also faced charges of negligence and neglect as a mother, especially since she was an experienced nurse. Abigail attempted to have her name removed from the child abuse registry maintained by the Missouri Department of Social Services. However, at trial, the court determined that Abigail had failed to protect her daughter from harm. Pediatrician testimony at trial showed that Stevie showed clear signs of abuse that a mother in the medical field would not have missed. Based on the reports, Abigail's actions were judged to be irresponsible and lacking in due care, leading the court to deny her request. Although Abigail was not criminally prosecuted, the incident damaged her reputation in the community and the medical profession. Testimony at the trial also shed light on many details about Abigail's relationship with Joseph and her lack of decisive action when her daughter was in danger. The court found that Abigail had failed to act responsibly as a mother and upheld the verdict against her. The trial ended but left Stevie's family deeply wounded. Stevie's father, Gary, expressed great disappointment with the legal system, saying that justice had not been fully served. He continues to campaign for a meaningful memorial space for his daughter and to shed light on Stevie's story to prevent similar tragedies. Stevie's story leaves an indelible mark, but also serves as a call to action to protect vulnerable children. By raising awareness and taking more decisive action, we can hope to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Your support means the world to us.